Good morning. Welcome to the August 2021 open meeting of the Federal Communications Commission, which we're holding during the Olympics. And when I last checked just a few minutes ago, the United States leads with a medal count of 91. So go USA. All right, Madam Secretary, would you please announce our agenda this morning?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning to you and good morning, commissioners. Morning. For today's meeting, you will hear 4 items for your consideration. First, you will consider a public notice that would create 2 new innovation zones for program experimental licenses and the expansion of an existing innovation zone. Second, you will consider a further notice of proposed rulemaking to update the Commission's rules regarding direct access to numbers by interconnected voice over internet protocol providers to safeguard the nation's finite numbering resources, curb illegal robocalls, protect national security, and further promote public safety. Third, we will consider a report and order that would establish a process for the Commission to review decisions of the private Stir Shaken Governance Authority that would have the effect of placing voice service providers out of compliance with the Commission's Stir Shaken implementation rules. Fourth, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking on TRS fund compensation methodology for IP relay service. This is your agenda for today. Please note item 5, revisions to political programming and record-keeping rules, and item 6, review of the Commission's Part 95 personal radio services as listed on the Commission's July 29th Sunshine Notice have been adopted by the Commission and deleted from today's agenda. The first item on your agenda is entitled Establishing 2 New Innovation Zones and will be presented by the Office of Engineering and Technology. Ron Rapazzi, Acting Chief of the Office, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Rapazzi, please proceed.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. OET is pleased to present for your consideration a public notice that would create 2 new innovation zones established in and nearby North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. These 2 new innovation zones will complement 2 previously approved zones in Salt Lake City and New York City. Innovation zones help spur experimentation by permitting qualified licensees to test new advanced technologies and prototype networks like Open RAN and 5G outside of a traditional small campus or laboratory setting and help to develop new services for consumers that are not available today. Tony Serafini, the chief of OET's experimental licensing branch in the Electromagnetic and Compatibility Division, will present the item. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. The item before you is a public notice that creates 2 new innovation zones and expands an existing innovation zone in New York City. These new innovation zones will be established in and nearby North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Northeast University in Boston, Massachusetts. These innovation zones are a joint effort by local research institutions and the National Science Foundation's funded Platforms for Advanced Wireless Research, or POWER. The North Carolina State University Innovation Zone will study new use cases for advanced wireless technologies that are emerging in unmanned aerial systems. The Northeast University Innovation Zone will enable researchers to use former DARPA-sponsored wireless network emulator called Coliseum to extend and accelerate research in wireless network systems. Additionally, the public notice will slightly extend the geographic boundaries of the existing New York City Innovation Zone and increase the permitted maximum power for certain frequency bands within the designated area. The added extended innovation zones will support a robust experimental licensing program under Part 5 of the rules. Among the licensing options for innovators is the program experimental license. Program licenses allow qualified institutions to conduct testing of multiple unrelated experiments under a single authorization within a defined geographic area under control of the licensee. When the Commission created the program license in 2013, it also adopted the ability for program licensees to operate within innovation zones without amending their licenses. The innovation zones, such as those being created in the public notice before you, take the program license concept a step further by extending the licensee's authorized area of operation, increasing experimentation flexibility, and easing reporting requirements. The first two innovation zones were created in September 2019 in designated portions of New York City and Salt Lake City and are managed by Power. These innovation zones provide opportunities for qualified licensees to test new advanced technologies and prototype networks like Open RAN and 5G outside of traditional small campus or laboratory setting. The innovation zones approved today, in addition to previously approved innovation zones, are actively engaged in Open RAN development community and are expected to extend Open RAN technology beyond development further. These new innovation zones will provide additional experimental opportunities and complement the existing innovation zones in Salt Lake City and New York City. More specifically, at North Carolina State University, the Aerial Experimentation and Research Platform for Advanced Wireless, AirPal, will create a platform to focus on new use cases for advanced wireless technologies that are emerging for unmanned aerial systems. AirPal will focus on how cellular networks and advanced wireless technologies can enable beyond visual line of sight unmanned aerial systems to accelerate development, verification, and testing of transformative advances and breakthroughs in telecommunication, transportation, infrastructure monitoring, agriculture, and public safety. Notably, AirPal Testbed will be the first platform to at-scale testing of Open RAN and 5G and beyond solutions in unmanned aerial systems. At Northeast University, Power will support the transition of DARPA's Coliseum Network Emulator to a shared platform that is usable by research community. Coliseum, the world's largest wireless network emulator, was originally designed to support DARPA's Spectrum Collaboration Challenge. With the conclusion of the challenge, the larger research community will now be able to take advantage of Coliseum's unique capabilities, including the ability to emulate full stack communications and to support artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms and hardware in the loop. Collectively, these innovation zones will help promote platforms to test integration of open radio access networks and promotes the development of new technologies to be used in advanced networks of the future. Staff recommends approval of this public notice and requests editorial privileges solely for technical and conforming edits.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench, and we will begin with Commissioner Carr.
Well, thank you so much to the Bureau for your work on this. This is one of those items that's going to make it a lot easier for innovators to continue to make progress on 5G, on Open RAN. And it's one of those items that makes a lot of sense when you look at it, but there is actually a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes that's needed to get here. So I really want to thank the chair for her leadership. This is not something that you just can sort of announce and it happens. There's a lot of coordination behind the scenes to make sure that we can create these zones, and then people are then free to experiment from there. So thanks to the Bureau for all your hard work behind the scenes on this. Thanks to the chair for her leadership getting this done. It has my support. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Carr. Now we'll hear from Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Experimentation and innovation are critical to advancing the development of our communication networks. The FCC has a responsibility to encourage such efforts because they will hopefully lead to more benefits that will expand and enhance connectivity, promote U.S. leadership, and economic competitiveness around the world. And so the innovation zones that we announced here today should spur progress in those two major areas that we heard of: unmanned aircraft systems, UAS, and Open RAN wireless networks. I also have to say that I got to sit down virtually with an event with Governor Cooper of North Carolina just last week. And in particular, he is a governor who is eager to take on transformative technological advancements. The first innovative zone will allow focused experimentation for UAS use cases, and this action is very timely. In early 2020, I visited the Nevada Institute for Autonomous Systems, NIAS, an FAA-designated UAS test site just outside of Las Vegas. And during that visit, I learned how NIAS is helping to incubate some of those new UAS companies, develop new applications, techniques, technologies to facilitate integration into our national airspace. UAS, I believe, has tremendous potential with benefits for public safety applications, critical infrastructure inspections, firefighting, preservation and monitoring of our vast natural resources and rural areas and tribal lands. UAS will also offer potential benefits for consumers and other industries through innovative delivery services, transportation, and of course, telecom. So authorizing this new zone will provide valuable data for researchers as we continue to spearhead experimentation and development. This is a great step. We do have more work to do, though. And so for years, we've heard about how the lack of access to licensed spectrum for UAS may be stifling critical innovation in this explosive sector. And so I think it's time we address this issue, which necessitates moving forward, of course, in a coordinated manner with our federal partners at the FAA and NTIA. And we are going to need licensed spectrum for a truly integrated airspace, free of harmful interference. And if you can forgive the pun, without licensed spectrum, UAS can't truly take off. Our decision should also spur progress in another exciting technological area that we've all been speaking about, Open RAN technologies. O-RAN could increase network security, reduce operator costs, restore the United States as a leader in the provision of communications equipment and services. One of the major challenges associated with Open RAN, however, is overcoming the uncertainty of potential customers, particularly with those small carriers, and in adopting such a novel approach towards network infrastructure. And so the second innovation zone we authorize here today has the potential to address some of this uncertainty, allowing that experimentation at an unprecedented scale. In the world's largest network emulator, as we heard, aptly named the Coliseum, it is truly a massive radio frequency emulator supported with 256 programmable software-defined radios capable of emulating a full wireless network. And until now, this tool was only available to researchers associated with DARPA, but now it will be available to researchers for the whole wireless community. I saw the Coliseum in action along with the acting chair a couple of years ago during the finals of DARPA's Spectrum Collaboration Challenge, and can testify that it is an impressive tool. I'm confident that this project will allow researchers to improve our understanding of O-RAN capabilities, increase confidence in potential O-RAN customers as well. And so the Commission must continue its work of encouraging this innovation. The more opportunities to experiment and innovate, the faster we'll be able to achieve universal access to the most advanced communication networks. These innovation zones are a great step, but we need to keep pushing. I agree. Thank you to the acting chair for her hard work on this, and of course to OET on this item as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm excited and happy to support today's public notice. The designation of these two new innovation zones will advance new use cases for emerging advanced wireless technologies and furtherance of U.S. technological leadership. I'd also like to express my appreciation, as my colleagues have done, to OET staff and to the chair for their hard work in getting this crucial item over the line.
Thank you, commissioners. Our 5G future is about connecting everything. It's about moving to a new networked world that will open up possibilities for communications that we cannot even fully imagine today. By exponentially increasing the connections between people and things around us, this technology could become an input in everything we do, improving agriculture, education, healthcare, energy, transportation, and more. In the United States, if we want to reap the full benefits of this 5G future, it is essential that we take action to advance our wireless leadership. We're taking action with our new focus on mid-band spectrum. Last week, we granted more than 5,000 new mid-band licenses in the 3.7 to 3.98 gigahertz band. In October, we'll kick off another auction of prime mid-band spectrum for 5G in the 3.45 to 3.55 gigahertz band. And moving down the spectrum chart, we've granted more than 250 spectrum licenses in the 2.5 gigahertz band to help address rural tribal connectivity needs, and expect to auction the remaining licenses after we complete the 3.45 to 3.55 gigahertz band auction that will start in October. We're also taking action to prioritize 5G security and supply chain trust. We published the first ever list of communications equipment and services that pose an unacceptable risk to national security. We prohibited the use of universal service funds to purchase this equipment, and we are targeting late October to launch a program to help carriers replace this equipment to the extent that it is present in their networks today. And we're taking action to support open and interoperable equipment for our 5G wireless world. Earlier this year, we launched the first ever inquiry exploring how we can accelerate the development and deployment of open radio access networks, or Open RAN. We created opportunities for carriers who want to transition to Open RAN as they replace insecure equipment in their networks to do so. And last month, the agency held its first ever Open RAN showcase, which gave network operators an opportunity to hear directly from vendors about the capabilities of open, interoperable, and standards-based 5G network equipment. And we're taking more action today. We are establishing innovation zones that will support cutting-edge wireless research and development, including efforts to advance Open RAN. So how does this work? Well, the FCC's experimental licensing rules have long provided a platform for innovation. Experimental licensing allows researchers to develop and test systems without the cost of getting a commercial wireless license. It's a terrific way to foster innovation. But historically, researchers have had to apply for an experimental license for each new test that they want to run. So research institutions, manufacturers, and other large entities would file to get a program license instead, which authorizes them to conduct a range of experiments within facilities under their control without having to seek an individual experimental license for each one. So innovation zones take this concept and really crank up the possibilities. That's because there's city-scale test beds that make it possible for anyone with a program license to show up and conduct experiments. They make opportunities for innovation accessible both to large entities and small players. Plus, they make it possible to develop products in real-world environments at a scale no laboratory could ever provide. So today we established two new innovation zones. The Boston Innovation Zone is split between the campuses of Northeastern University, and it will allow for testing in dense urban and suburban environments. It also will support the transition of DARPA's Coliseum network emulator to a shared platform, so it's usable by the broader research community. The Raleigh Innovation Zone, in collaboration with North Carolina State University, will house the Aerial Experimentation and Research Platform for Advanced Wireless, which will focus on new use cases and things like developing flying 5G base stations to support wireless connectivity. But our efforts are not limited to these new zones in Boston or Raleigh. That's because today we also increase the footprint of our existing innovation zone in New York City, which supports what is known as the Cloud-Enhanced Open Software-Defined Mobile Wireless Testbed for City-Scale Development. And this will create more opportunities to explore edge computing and how it can be leveraged for the emerging Internet of Things. And taken together, these initiatives will support a range of new innovations and experimentation in next-generation ultra-high bandwidth and low latency wireless communications. We're also leveraging these testbeds to advance ongoing work to develop Open RAN, and doing this now will help ensure that this technology develops here on our shores. This in turn can mean more competition and security and network equipment for 5G service and beyond. It's a way to turn up the innovation and supercharge competition and vendor diversity in the 5G supply chain. I'm really proud that the FCC can do this. I'm also proud that we have collaborated with our federal partners to make it happen. This effort builds on the Spectrum Innovation Initiative Memorandum of Understanding I signed in February with our partners from the National Science Foundation and the NTIA. I especially want to thank the National Science Foundation for coordinating these innovation zones through its Platforms for Advanced Wireless Research program. So this is a big deal. That's because history tells us when you give innovators in the United States sandboxes to test new ideas, good things follow. Here's hoping that creating these innovation zones will unlock new breakthroughs in advanced wireless technology and Open RAN. I know I'm excited to see what comes next. So thank you to the staff working on this all-hands effort, including Martin Doskat, Michael Ha, Kevin Holmes, Ira Keltz, Jameson Prime, Ron Rapazzi, Tony Serafini, and Tom Struble from the Office of Engineering and Technology. Linda Chang, Charles Mathias, Roger Noel, and Joel Tabenblatt from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Kate Matres from the Office of Economics and Analytics, and Deborah Broderson and David Horowitz from the Office of General Counsel. And with that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, please announce the next item on today's agenda.
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, the second item today is entitled Numbering Policies for Modern Communications and will be presented by the Wireline Competition Bureau. Chris Monteith, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ms. Monteith, please proceed with introducing item number 2 on today's agenda.
Thank you and good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. The Wireline Competition Bureau is pleased to present for your consideration a further notice of proposed rulemaking on direct access to numbers by interconnected voice over Internet protocol or VoIP providers. This item, if adopted, would propose clarifications to and guardrails for the Commission's interconnected VoIP direct access application process to help stem the tide of illegal robocalls, safeguard the nation's finite numbering resources, protect national security, reduce the opportunity for regulatory arbitrage, and further promote public safety. I would like to thank the Bureau team for their hard work on this item, as well as our colleagues in the International, Enforcement, Public Safety and Homeland Security, and Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureaus, and the Offices of Economics and Analytics and General Counsel for their review and valuable assistance. I would also like to thank our federal partners at the U.S. Department of Justice for their helpful coordination and input. Jordan Reth, an attorney advisor in WCB's Competition Policy Division, will now present the item. Jordan?
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. In 2015, the Commission established an authorization process that permits interconnected VoIP providers to obtain numbers for customers directly from the numbering administrators rather than relying on a carrier partner. Congress, via the TRACE Act, directed the Commission to examine whether and how to modify its policies to reduce access to telephone numbers by potential perpetrators of illegal robocalls. Based on our experiences and our review of the direct access authorization process, the further notice would, if adopted, propose clarifications and revisions to the Commission's rules to better ensure that interconnected VoIP providers that obtain the benefit of direct access to numbers do not facilitate illegal robocalls, pose national security risks, or evade or abuse intercarrier compensation requirements. If adopted, this further notice of proposed rulemaking would first propose to require additional certifications as part of the direct access application process, addressing, among other things, compliance with anti-robocalling obligations. Second, it would propose to clarify that applicants for direct access authorization must disclose foreign ownership information and would propose to direct staff to generally refer those applications with 10% or greater foreign ownership to the executive branch agencies for their review, consistent with our referral of other types of applications. Third, it would propose to clarify that holders of a direct access authorization must update the Commission and applicable states within 30 days of changes to ownership information submitted to the Commission. Fourth, it would propose to clarify that Commission staff retain the authority to determine when to accept filings as complete, and would propose to direct Commission staff to reject an application if an applicant has engaged in behavior contrary to the public interest or has been found to originate or transmit illegal robocalls. And finally, if adopted, the item would seek comment on whether to expand the direct access authorization to one-way VoIP providers or other entities that use numbering resources. The Bureau recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks so much to the Bureau team for all your work on this item. It has my support. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Starks.
Yes, no statement from me either. Thank you for the hard work from the Bureau and taking the lead here. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Symington.
No statement other than to express my appreciation to the Bureau for their hard work on this nuanced and detailed item.
So if you want to stop robocalls, you need to look far and wide. That is the truth. You need to identify every policy and every practice that makes it possible for these nuisance calls to get through. That's what we do here. Thanks to the work of the robocall response team and the authority provided in the Trace Act, we are taking a fresh look at how to improve our numbering policies to protect against scammers using voice over internet protocol services. 6 years ago, the FCC decided to allow interconnected VoIP providers to obtain telephone numbers directly rather than acquire them through a traditional telecommunications carrier. This provided real benefits like greater competition. But this process needs more oversight because those picking up these numbers should not be in the business of facilitating robocalls, which is all too easy to do with VoIP technology. So today we propose new guardrails. Specifically, we propose to condition direct access to numbering resources or on those carriers certifying that they will not assist or facilitate illegal robocalls or spoofing, and that they take affirmative steps to stop the origination, termination, and transmission of these calls. We also propose that they register in our robocall mitigation database. In addition, we broadly recommend updates to our policies to protect numbering resources, and these include cracking down on access stimulation and proving compliance with 911 obligations before obtaining numbers. We also propose to update existing executive branch coordination when VoIP providers with substantial foreign ownership seek direct access to numbers. And for their work on this proceeding, I'd like to thank Pam Arlick, Matt Collins, Lynn Engeldow, Justin Fald, Victoria Goldberg, Dan Kahn, Melissa Kirkle, Ed Kretschmer, Al Lewis, Michael Nemsick, Jordan Reth, Michelle Slater, Doug Slotin, and Gil Strobel of the Wireline Competition Bureau. Jeff Goldthorpe, Deborah Jordan, Nikki McGinnis, Erica Olson, and Austin Randazzo of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, Denise Coca, Kathleen Collins, David Kretsch, Arthur Leckman, and Jim Schlichting of the International Bureau, Patrick Brogram, Eugene Kiselev, Richard Kwiatkowski, Mark Montano, Chuck Needy, Eric Ralph, Michelle Schaefer, Emily Talaga, and Shane Taylor of the Office of Economics and Analytics, Lisa Gelb, Christy Thompson, Shanna Yates, and Lisa Zana of the Enforcement Bureau, Jerusha Barnett, Aaron Garza, Kurt Schroeder, Mark Stone, and Christy Thornton of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and Marlena Barzilai, Rick Mallon, Linda Oliver, and Bill Richardson of the Office of General Counsel. We will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges just as requested. Okay, Madam Secretary, please announce the next item on today's agenda.
Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners, item 3 on your agenda will also be presented by the Wireline Competition Bureau and is entitled Call Authentication Trust Anchor, Appeals of the Stir-Shaken Governance Authority Token Revocation Decisions. And once again, Chris Monteith, Chief of the Bureau, will introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Welcome back, Ms. Monteith, and please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The Wireline Competition Bureau is also pleased to present for your consideration a third report and order on caller ID authentication. This item, if adopted, would establish an oversight role for the Commission to review decisions by the private stir-shaken governance authority that would have the effect of placing voice service providers out of compliance with the Commission's stir-shaken rules. I would like to thank the Bureau team, as always, for their hard work on this item. Alex Hobbs, an attorney advisor in the Wireline Competition Bureau's Competition Policy Division, will now present the item. Alex?
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Caller ID authentication using the stir-shaken framework is a key component of the Commission's ongoing multi-pronged campaign to combat illegal robocalls and illegal spoofing. Subject to some exceptions established by Congress, voice service providers were required to implement stir-shaken on the IP portions of their networks by June 30th, 2021. To participate in stir-shaken, a voice service provider must possess a digital token necessary to exchange authenticated voice traffic. To guard against bad actors and preserve trust within the distributed caller ID authentication system, the private governance authority that oversees the stir-shaken framework may, consistent with its established process, revoke a voice service provider's token for originating or transmitting illegally spoofed calls, despite implementing stir-shaken, or otherwise failing to comply with the rules governing token use. While this process is important for ensuring that stir-shaken works as intended, without a token, a voice service provider cannot exchange authenticated traffic, and therefore cannot participate in stir-shaken. This revocation process thus effectively allows the private governance authority to make decisions that render voice service providers non-compliant with the Commission's rules. If adopted, this third report and order would establish a process modeled on the Commission's established procedures for reviewing Universal Service Administration Company decisions for the Commission to review token revocation decisions made by the governance authority. This appeal process would ensure all providers receive appropriate due process before they are made non-compliant with our rules. The order would establish that a voice service provider aggrieved by a governance authority token revocation decision can file a request for review in the Commission's electronic comment filing system within 60 days of exhausting the governance authority's formal appeal process. The order would direct the Wireline Competition Bureau to review all such requests in the first instance and establish a 180-day shot clock for the Bureau to complete its review. The order would establish that the Bureau review all requests using a de novo standard of review, and that Bureau decisions may be appealed to the Commission if requested. The order would establish that voice service providers will not be judged to be in violation of our stir-shaken implementation rules during the pendency of an appeal. However, they will not be able to retain the use of their tokens or participate in the stir-shaken framework while an appeal is pending. The Bureau recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear any comments from the bench on this item. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks to the Bureau team on this one. Always glad to be making progress on robocall issues. I do want to thank my colleagues for agreeing to put a shot clock in place on appeals of these decisions, so we make sure that we get it right and get it right in a timely way. So I want to thank them for adding language that affected this item, and it has my support. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Starks.
Yes, nothing further from me, but appreciate the hard work of the team here. Thank you.
Commissioner Symington.
Appreciate the hard work of the team on this. Obviously, this is a necessary process step, and I'd like to also express my appreciation to Commissioner Carr for his addition of the shot clock, which I think is going to be an effective governance mechanism as well.
Thank you, commissioners. It was a little over a month ago, on June 30th, that the FCC required carriers across the country to put in place a call authentication system known as stir-shaken. And maybe you didn't take note of it when it happens, but you will benefit from it if you have a phone. That's because stir-shaken is a technology that helps protect against robocalls. And the more of it we put in our networks, the fewer junk calls we'll all receive. Now, the stir, shake, and framework depends on carriers holding a digital token provided by the private governance authority. And if a carrier abuses the system, the governance authority can revoke the token, meaning that the carrier cannot use stir, shake, and would fall out of compliance with our rules. Because due process matters, we clarify here the precise procedures to allow carriers with revoked tokens to appeal their decision to the FCC. This is the right thing to do. But make no mistake, if carriers fail to properly put in place the technology they were required to use to prevent robocalls, they will hear from us. I'd like to thank the robocall response team and the staff who worked on this decision, including Pamela Arlick, Michelle Burlove, Matthew Collins, Lynn Engeldow, Justin Fall, Victoria Goldberg, Alexander Hobbs, Dan Kahn, Jonathan Lecter, Albert Lewis, Chris Monteith, and Gil Strobel of the Wireline Competition Bureau, Jerusha Burnett, Aaron Garza, Kurt Schroeder, Mark Stone, and Christy Thornton of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Kim Cook and Jim Schlichting of the International Bureau, Ken Karlberg of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, Eugene Kiselev, Julia McHenry, Chuck Needy, Eric Ralph, and Emily Talaga of the Office of Economics and Analytics, and Michelle Ellison, Richard Mallon, Linda Oliver, William Richardson, and Derek Yeo of the Office of General Counsel. And with that, we'll proceed to a vote. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, please announce the next item on today's agenda.
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, the fourth and final item today, entitled Modernizing Telecommunications Relay Service, or TRS, Compensation, will be presented by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and Patrick Weber, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Weber, please proceed.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Today, the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau presents to you a notice of proposed rulemaking on Internet Protocol Relay Service, or IP Relay, which is a form of telecommunications relay service, or TRS. If adopted, the item would seek comment on proposals to strengthen TRS fund support for IP Relay by modifying the compensation methodology for this service. I would like to thank the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau staff for their hard work on this item. I would also like to thank the Office of Economics and Analytics, the Office of General Counsel, and the Office of Communications Business Opportunities for their contributions to this item. Joining me today is Bill Wallace, an attorney advisor in CGB's Disability Rights Office, who will present the item.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. The item before you proposes to modify the methodology for setting compensation for Internet Protocol Relay Service, or IP Relay. IP Relay allows an individual with a hearing or speech disability to communicate with a voice telephone users by transmitting text via the Internet. The text transmission is delivered to a relay call center where a communications assistant converts the user's text to speech for the hearing party and converts that party's speech to text for the IP relay user. Like other forms of IP-based telecommunications relay services, IP relay is supported entirely by the Interstate TRS Fund. The current compensation methodology for IP relay was approved by the Commission in 2007 and has not been reassessed since that time. Under the current methodology, a base level of permanent compensation is set for a 3-year period. In years 2 and 3, the base amount is subject to adjustments for inflation and efficiency, as well as adjustments for exogenous costs, which are beyond the control of the IP relay provider. The current 3-year compensation period ends on June 30th, 2022. Since 2007, IP relay services have undergone substantial changes. Specifically, service minutes dropped sharply after the Commission took steps to eliminate fraud and abuse. Additionally, several IP relay providers dropped out of the market, leaving Sprint Communications as the sole provider of the service. In 2018, Sprint, now T-Mobile, filed a petition with the Commission requesting changes in how IP relay compensation is determined. To account for these changed circumstances and to ensure that TRS fund support of IP Relay is sufficient to sustain a functionally equivalent telephone service, the notice of proposed rulemaking would propose and seek comment on a number of changes in the compensation methodology for this service. The notice would propose to modify the compensation methodology to permit recovery of a reasonable operating margin and the reasonable costs of outreach, and to rely on projected costs and demand as the basis for calculating the base compensation level. While proposing to retain a multi-year compensation period, the notice would seek comment on whether to modify the duration of the period, as well as the current approach to adjusting the compensation level in the course of a cycle. The notice also would seek comment on other possible changes, including T-Mobile's proposal to replace the current compensation methodology with a hybrid approach that relies in part on the weighted average compensation level for intrastate TTY-based relay service offered through state TRS programs. The Bureau recommends adoption of the item and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear any comments from the bench, starting with Commissioner Carr.
Thanks. Under the Communications Act, ensuring that people with speech or hearing loss have functionally equivalent access to telecom services is one of our statutory obligations, and it's one I think that all of us take very seriously. And so I'm glad that we are launching this proceeding that looks comprehensively at a lot of the changes over the past few years, how they impact the methodology that we use, and seeks comment on a lot of different options. I'm glad we're moving forward with this. Thanks to the Bureau for your work on it. Thanks to the chair for leading on this issue and bringing this item forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Starks.
Yes, no particular statement from me. Obviously making sure that the TRS fund compensation methodology is right calibrated here is deeply important for all of us. And so appreciate this item and we'll approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. Gratifying to continue seeing technical and financial oversight of this program in order to ensure that resources are best used to reach the maximum number of people in accordance with our statutory obligations, as highlighted by Commissioner Carr.
Thank you, commissioners. In 2007, technology was having a moment. The iPhone was introduced and big advancements took place in cloud storage and cognitive computing. And back in 2007, the FCC developed a methodology to support Internet Protocol Relay Services, or IP Relay, a technology to assist those with hearing and speech disabilities use text to communicate through the traditional phone system. And in the intervening years, there have been more iterations of the smartphone than we can count, and more expansion of cloud computing and machine learning than we even know how to quantify. But our framework for IP relay compensation stayed the same. It's time for an update, because with the passage of time, we know technology changes, and the systems we use at this agency to support services like IP relay would benefit from a fresh look. And that's just what we do here. We ask questions about the current costs an IP relay provider incurs when it provides service. We ask about the continuing viability of a multi-year compensation scheme, and we ask what changes may be necessary to ensure IP relay service continues to provide a functionally equivalent service for those with disabilities. As my colleagues have noted, this is required under the law. So thank you to the staff of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau for their work on this rulemaking, including Bob Aldrich, Diane Burstein, Drake Dara, Elliot Greenwald, Haley Preacher, Michael Scott, Bill Wallace, and Patrick Weber from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Belford Lawson from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, Susan Lee, Virginia Metallo, Eric Ralph, and Emily Talaga from the Office of Economics and Analytics, and Terry Kavanaugh, Richard Mallon, and Bill Richardson from the Office of General Counsel. And with that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
Chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. And now I have come to the point where we're going to talk about announcements. So would any of my colleagues like to make announcements at this time? I'll start with Commissioner Carr.
I do have one. I want to this is the last week here with our interns that have been serving in our office. And I do have a statement that I have to look up here real quick. Hang on, hold for a second. It's been a different summer experience with COVID, with most people working remotely, but we did have two great interns this summer, Tyler and Jordan, who I introduced a couple months ago. And they've been really great assets for our office and for the FCC. Tyler did research for us on different broadband plans and initiatives going on under all 50 states. He did some work for us on some research for Section 230 issues, a project that I've talked about every once in a while, and did some other research for us. Jordan also pitched in on some of the 230 work that we've been doing over the past few weeks and months, and has been tracking a lot of other items for us and really providing some valuable assistance. So really appreciate the two of them interning this summer in our office, and look forward to their future and continued success. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Similarly, it is the last open meeting for my interns as well. And they are Zach Tauger, Estizer Smith, Jasmine Bejarano, Danielle Daniel Zahn. And it's, it's a unique time to be a student right now. And there are many challenges, but also many unique opportunities. And so wish each of them the best. They have been extraordinarily helpful to me, to my team, and I can't say enough about each of them. So thank you for your help, and look forward to great things from you in the coming year and beyond.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Starks. Commissioner Symington, any announcements?
Thank you. No announcements at this time, other than to express my ongoing gratitude for my office's excellent intern, Isabella Russo TSE, of whom we expect great things.
No pressure there. All right, thank you all. Before we adjourn, I want to make a few brief announcements. First, after 28 years with the FCC, Joanne Lukanik will be retiring in September. She came to the agency in 1993, beginning her career as a staff attorney, and was then the newly created Cable Services Bureau. Her hard work and leadership skills quickly led to important management and supervisory roles, which she held throughout her career in positions with the Cable Services, Common Carrier, International, and Enforcement Bureaus. Joanne is currently a deputy in the Enforcement Bureau's Spectrum Enforcement Division. Her many years of experience and wise counsel on equipment marketing and public safety matters like 911 outage enforcement are going to be very, very much missed. We wish her only good things in retirement. Next, some unfortunate news. A long-time and much cherished FCC employee, Ellen Gilliam, died from cancer recently. Ellen was with the FCC for over 3 decades, and she worked in human resources most of that time. Her detailed memory and efficient customer service were appreciated by so many FCC staff she assisted over the years in her work. She's fondly remembered by many FCC family as the face of the commission who had a special ability to make those who had to make inquiries about HR feel instantly welcome. She was warm, caring, and an engaging colleague who never failed to take an interest in her coworkers and their families, and was always happy to engage in conversations about travel and the news of the day. She was a deeply kind individual, and our entire FCC family wishes the best to her family. She will be long remembered and missed. And then finally, I'm just going to make a personal note here. This is the last FCC open meeting with our Associate Secretary, Cece Sigmund, who does a lot of work behind the scenes to assist Secretary Marlene Dortch, and also the agency as a whole, to get these meetings running and make them happen. She's moving on to a comparable role at the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we wish her only good things. So if my colleagues don't have any further announcements, Madam Secretary, please announce the next date of the next FCC agenda meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, September 30th, 2021.
Until then, we stand adjourned.